Welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast, the show about sparking and discovering endless possibilities where we work, live, and play. A safe place where we can help you peel back the cover to what may be blocking you from being your most authentic and happiest self.
I'm so excited to invite my good friend and colleague to the show today. Shamia Lodge currently serves as the Director of Community Engagement at Adventive Technologies, where they're providing access to technology, transforming lives, fostering inclusivity, and creating a pathway to successful reentry back into society. Most recently, Shamia was a fellow with CEO Action for Racial Equity, serving as the Economic Empowerment Platform Lead, overseeing fair chance hiring, business diversity, and community development. Shamia is passionate about creating fair opportunities for those impacted by the justice system. She is also the Arizona State Ambassador to the United States of Women and one of Phoenix Business Journal's 2021 40 Under 40 honorees. Shamia dives into her passion about how she is helping to make a difference with fair chance hiring. Take a moment to see how your company can leverage this movement as part of an augmented hiring strategy and how we can give each other a hands up as a way for all of us to have at least a chance to live our possible. Enjoy the show. Shamia Lodge, welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast. How are you?
I'm well, Darren. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm doing great. Now that I get to see you live on a podcast, I'm just sitting here with pure joy.
As always, right?
Hey, let's just jump in. I'm curious about what you're most passionate about these days.
Yeah, well, Darren, I'm obviously passionate about a lot of things, but the thing I am doing right now that I actually call my ministry is I am passionate about being the voice of the voiceless. And I get the opportunity to really work with individuals who are incarcerated and their friends and family. And that's given me a great deal of joy right now.
Yeah, that sounds pretty special to be able to share your voice and help the voiceless hopefully have their own way of getting out to the world in a different way. I'd love to hear more about that. Tell me what are you doing?
Yeah, so I am the director of community engagement at a prison technology company, and we are responsible for keeping loved ones connected through technology. So think about when someone says, "Hey, I have a loved one incarcerated. I just received a phone call from them." Chances are they made that phone call through our technology. Or if someone wants to say, "Hey, I just received an email from my loved one." Well, they probably, got an email utilizing one of our devices. We also provide education opportunities. It's a really unique, purpose-driven organization that I work for.
How would you summarize it in one word?
Connectivity.
I was thinking connection, exactly, on the same page. Staying connected with family, with friends. Just having that level of hope.
Hope. Oh my gosh, we talk about that all the time. I actually was just meeting with one of the family members a couple weeks ago, and she said, "I have a newfound hope because I'm able to stay connected to my loved one." And I just said, wow.
That's pretty aspirational too, as far as helping people see that and feel that.
I leave work most days fulfilled. I really do. It is really remarkable what we do for this population and the people I'm able to engage with as a result. So.
When you say education, what is it you're providing there? What's the educational piece?
Oh, wow. So we actually have services on our devices where individuals are able to take college courses, get their degree, get a certificate in certain different swim lanes when you think about trade opportunities. And so, yeah, it's a really, really, really robust offering that we offer as a company. Mhm.
And what is that doing for the folks that are incarcerated?
It's making sure that they have the tools and resources they need to successfully reacclimate into society once they return home. I mean, when you think about it, it's something like, oh gosh, I don't have my stats in front of me, so I'm not going to throw out a number, but it is a high percentage of people who are incarcerated that will return home and be our neighbors. And so when you think about this from a public safety perspective, it should be all of our hopes and wishes that individuals who are incarcerated are provided with tools to make them more prepared for the workforce when they come home. And so it's really helping individuals change just the game and have a new outlook on life when they return home.
Yeah, you said you didn't know the percentage. I thought I read something around 20 to 30%. Does that make sense?
It's higher than that. It's upwards towards 70% of individuals who are currently incarcerated will be returning home one day. So think about it based off of returning home.
I think the number I was thinking about is number of folks that are actually incarcerated. What percentage of people in the United States?
So I believe it's 1.9 million people
Okay.
currently incarcerated, and towards 100 million people by the year 2030 will have some level of arrest or conviction. And so right now it's about 80 million people who have a record, a criminal conviction record. So whether they serve time or not, there's people who have a record, and it's hard for them to get employment. And so if any of those people were incarcerated and they had access to our technology, it somewhat helps them return home and be more prepared.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So that makes me happy.
Yeah, exactly. That makes you happy.
It does.
Gosh, there's a ton of questions that I want to ask you about this. I guess first thing is why? Like, why are you in this space?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And I don't really share this information often. I mean, people know, and I'm never afraid to share this information, but my background, education, and training is in human resource management, right? So I was a recruiter at one point in my career. My degree is in HR. But more than that, I identify as a subset of Americans who have an immediate family member currently incarcerated. And so my brother is currently incarcerated in the state of North Carolina. And so for me, this is a very personal thing and journey that I'm embarking on. And my brother actually ended up recidivating. And when he came home the first time, he didn't second chance hiring, fair chance hiring. Those weren't a thing at that time. And even though my brother was able to obtain his degree while incarcerated, he just didn't have an employment opportunity. And so for me, I know that I wanted to do more to help my brother when he comes home next time, which is in a couple of years. But more than that, I wanted to help more people like my brother. And so I do this work separate and apart from the company that I work for now, which I'm ecstatic that I work for this company. This is just by happenstance, but I did this work before I started to work for the company that I work for because it started for me as a responsibility as a human resources professional.
That's touching.
You think so?
Yes.
I know you do, Darren. I know you do because you're such a great person. I can see the look on your face. You're like, oh my gosh, this is really great. I know you, Darren, and I know you truly believe that it's touching. It really is.
Well, I'm glad you feel, the power of purpose because it's bigger than you. You're always selfless. Like I've always known you as selfless, and you're doing this for not only your brother, but other folks, like you said, like your brother and the families that are sitting there waiting for loved ones like yourself at home, waiting for them to come home.
You got it. I cannot imagine what life would be like if I wasn't able to communicate with my brother while he's incarcerated. And so, again, it's really, really, really personal for me. The work that I do, I'm oftentimes putting myself in the shoes of our consumers because I am a consumer. And so I work as I am first a consumer and then an employee. And in most cases, obviously, I'm an employee, then a consumer, but I enter into spaces with that mindset and that mentality. I'm often faced with being the person in the room to say, and what about the consumer? And I work for a great company where we really value the needs of our consumers, and they go hand in hand with the needs of our customers as well.
It's so honorable that you're helping folks not only communicate and stay connected, like you're saying, you're educating so folks are being prepared to be productive and be a contributor to society, to their own dignity, to be able to provide in a different way, which is so beautiful. How can companies connect with this journey, right? You're doing the great work about helping individuals get better and better themselves to be prepared because there is there's a bigger opportunity for each of us. And I'm with you. I think we all deserve second chances. I think there's a beauty inside of all of us that we need to make sure we're taking a look at. And you're doing the work, get people prepared. How can companies get prepared and look at things differently to embrace these individuals, these amazing individuals that are looking for the second chance?
Yes, and honestly, Darren, let's unpack this. I want to answer that in two different ways because, in many cases, and you this will resonate with you and it will resonate with our story, right? In many cases, some people didn't get a first chance or a first opportunity, let
Yeah.
alone a second chance. And so this is why, as an industry, not an industry like I work for, but as a movement, when we start to talk about second chance hiring, that's why we did some work and really rebranded it to be more along the lines of fair chance hiring, right? We still embrace the term second chance. It makes a lot of sense. And that in fact is kind of what we're doing on the surface. But when we talk about fair chances and fair opportunities, this is exactly what we mean. And so I just wanted to put it out there. A lot of these individuals, when you think about their backs against the wall and them never having an opportunity, this is going to be the opportunity when they come home, right? Or if they have a record and now they're faced with background checks and not being able to be employed because of the background check process. And so, what I would say to companies and what I've said to companies for many years before I got this role is really look at your hiring policies and procedures and see, if they're outdated. Take a look at revising and revamping them, but more importantly, what you should be doing is immersing yourself in the thought of what is safe versus not safe, right? Working hand in hand with your employment law team and really starting to look at some of your outdated processes, because chances are these individuals are highly talented, reliable, and eager to work. And many of the times, we put these outdated practices in place, and that's just what they are. They're very much so outdated. And so I would say there's tons of resources out there. Society of Human Resource Management, SHRM, has a great course and great framework called Getting Talent Back to Work, which I've taken myself and many of my colleagues have as well. It is really foundational to making sure we really do the work to understand this topic. So I would just encourage companies to lean in, right, and open up their thoughts to the possibility. And I'll say, Darren, there is a lot of companies who are out there who are doing this and have been doing it for many years and don't talk about it because it's a part of their practice, right? There is companies right now, as we speak, having meetings on this very topic of
Mhm.
how they can include it into their hiring strategies. And so, what I will say for the companies who have yet to explore this thought, continue to educate yourself and reach out to organizations who are doing it and doing it well.
Yeah, that's great. And I've worked with companies too that are actively part of it. So you're right. There's plenty of companies that are participating. There's different levels of comfort. Yet I think like anything, I think we need to lean in and learn and understand and ask questions. Like that's anything that we're up against. This world is so divisive. I think if we don't lean in and check it out ourselves and understand what's possible, I think we're missing out on so much opportunity for everybody.
Yes, and I want companies to trust me. And so let me tell you one thing. I'm going to fill you in on a secret, Darren. So for a few years now, I've been kind of on a road show, right? Having this very similar conversation with a lot of companies, helping them to do this work. And I oftentimes would sit back and say, oh my gosh, like they're doing it. They're going to do it. They're committed. Like, yes, this is great. And I selfishly wanted to know if the industry or the people I was saying they needed to bring into their companies, if they were ready, right? If they were really ready to work for these organizations. And I can say, I now work for a company where I have access to individuals, and I can truly say that many of them are more than ready to come and work for the company. So selfishly speaking, I had to come and do this gut check to say, wow, I've been getting all of these companies ready to take this talent on. Like, let me make sure the talent is ready. And they're ready. And what I will say is that it's never about a handout for this population, right? It's simply just a hand up, right? You are still looking to hire the top talent for this position. And if just so happens if the top talent or that one individual, have had a background, but they're better now and they're ready for work, you should not bypass them because of their background if they're identified as being the one and only for this one role you're looking to hire for. So
Yeah, that's good. Hand up. I love that.
Yeah, there's no more handouts. There's no handouts. No one needs it. Darren, come on, our story. I didn't really need a handout. You needed to just say, come on, Shemaya, let's go. And you know, so yeah, it's not about a handout.
I no, I agree. I just think in today's world, I think there's misconceptions on or misunderstanding that it is all about handouts and equality and equity and all the elements that people get all caught up with as far as feeling like everybody has better opportunities. And the reality is what you just said, the hand up, give people a chance. I think give people a chance to be heard, to be able to show up as themselves. And if folks are doing the work, like you mentioned about as far as educating some folks that are incarcerated, or for that matter, anybody that wants to get a particular job, right? It's our responsibility to own that as individuals. We have to own our work. I think you say that all the time.
Yes. And these people will show up and they will show out and they will do a great job. And again, this isn't not like a public service announcement, but this is like I did the gut check. Like I had to say, okay, wait a minute, Shemaya. Like, wait, let just go and kind of pressure test the system real quick. And yes, I'm like, wow. And I knew it all along. Again, like I've been doing this work. I've been in contact with, just this industry for a while now. But I needed to really go and assess the scene. And folks are ready. They rehabilitated themselves. They are ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, talk about loyalty too, as far as, getting that look, getting that chance. I bet you loyalty is pretty darn good. People are going to work uh, maybe differently. I don't, at least folks I've seen some hard work, people that are eager to move ahead. And I've met someone recently in Connecticut. Yeah, I met this guy John from Connecticut. He started up a company called Fair Screen, which I believe is helping folks out as far as understanding what to look for, right? It's doing background checks, not just to say, hey, they've been convicted or what have you. It's actually looking at what folks are doing since being incarcerated. Looking at what they've been working on, right? What have they been? Did they get a degree? Have they participated in different events and different opportunities? And to me, it's so enlightening because as someone that works with a lot of different companies, I'm encouraging them to make sure they're pausing to take a look at this.
Thank you. Yes, yes, and yes. And John is an amazing individual, and his services are doing it the right way. There's so many organizations out there like John, and I told John this when I first met him, like, wow, you really figured this out. Like, you really have figured out how to really assess and address that gap, right? And so we had a really great conversation one time and we talked about it. Like, and he mentioned when people say, you have to have a certain level of rigor. Like people are waking up at 5 in the morning, they are going to a job when they're in prison. It's not like the jobs we're used to, but there's some level of discipline and some level of loyalty that's there. He helps candidates speak to that and he helps employers make sure that they're aware of that. And so yeah, John's the real deal.
Yeah, he's great. I love it. And I know you don't like to talk about yourself. I know you're a board member for Reinventing Reentry. I don't know if there's something there you want to talk about. I also know you're going to law school. I don't know if that ties into this work. Does that tie into this work to be able to?
Okay, a few things. I am completing my master's degree in legal studies. So I am not going to school to be anyone's lawyer. I just want to understand the law so I can help this population a little bit more. My emphasis is on employment law, just again to understand the rules and not to by any means, have any kinds of litigations or be anyone attorney. Like I'm not there with it. I'm a mother of 4 little girls and I'm excited because they're starting their college journey really soon. So I'll leave that up to them. Yes, and so a quick story about reinventing reentry. So my dear mentor, Sue Ellen Allen, really kind of put me on notice for this work. She called me out and she called me out in a way where I wasn't taken aback, but I was embarrassed for a variety of reasons. And so, in order for you to kind of understand and know who Sue Ellen is, I have to really describe her. And so, I met Sue Ellen Allen when she was in her 60s. And she's about 5'1" 5'2" red hair And she's a white woman, right? She's Caucasian. And so when I met Sue Ellen, we shared a mentee. So my mentee, Sue Ellen mentee, she had an opportunity to apply for this amazing opportunity that the Obama Foundation was hosting out here in Arizona. Long story short, she ended up getting the opportunity, and post the cohort, she actually treated Sue Ellen and I to supper. So we went to supper, and at this time, I never really engaged with Sue Ellen Allen. I knew who she was. I saw a few panels she was on, but I'm just like, okay, right. I was never really like, I didn't engage with her. And it was at this dinner where we talked about just the work we were doing. And I'll never forget it. I was actually studying for to get my license for a exam I had to take for the financial institution we used to work for together. And I was so nervous, and just it was weighing heavy on me. She's like, "You'll do fine." And so it was at that time she shared with me that she has served time in prison in her 50s. She served time in prison when she was in her 50s, and during her time in prison, she was battling stage 3 cancer and stage 3 breast cancer during this time. And so she was in chemo while she was in prison. And so we shared our stories, we talked, and it was crazy because our mentee was just like I she just said, like, I you guys, like, I have to go, like, like, do you mind if I head home? We were still there talking. And so we're like, fine, whatever, you can go home. Thanks for the supper. And we chatted and we spoke, and 40 minutes later, the bus boy came out and he said, "Hey, my manager wants me to lock up the restaurant." It was closing. It had closed. It was closed like an hour and 10 minutes beforehand. So anyway, our conversation uh went out to the parking lot, and then it was about 30 minutes later, I looked at my clock and I said, "Oh my gosh, I have to get this lady home." I wasn't driving her, she was driving herself, but it was late and I wanted to respect her time. So long story short, she said, "Shemaya, I'm really saddened by how you have really neglected your brother in a way where you have everything you have in your power and you haven't put in the work to support making sure he will be fine and okay when he returns home." Oh my gosh, it blew my mind. I just was just, oh my gosh, it just, and I never thought about it at that time because I told you I do this work for a
Yeah.
lot of this work for my brother, but it was at that time was she talking about, you have your degree in HR, you're doing nothing with it. You're not helping to advocate, which I know you can. At that time, she invited me to be on her board, and the rest has been history. So I'll tell you, in about 7 days, we are going to be honoring Sue Ellen, and we will be marking 2 years since she passed away. One of the hardest times in my life that I had to go through. I went from being on Sue Ellen's board to being her health proxy at the time of her
Wow.
passing. She passed away orphaned and widowed. And so, yes, I am helping to keep her legacy alive in many ways.
I have chills because I was thinking exactly what you just said. You're living out her legacy.
Yeah, and it's hard at times, but I couldn't imagine life any different. And I feel like I have an angel. I have many angels in heaven, but I really feel like I can feel her in me as I do this work each and every. Like I literally can feel her in my ear, talking all of the stuff she talks, but encouraging me to do this work. So yeah.
Initially I'm thinking how amazing she's willing to give you that feedback and how must have felt to hear some of it as you just reacted. At the same time, I've always, because we've known each other for some time, and I've always seen you as someone that could step in and have tough conversations, not only to receive feedback, also to give it as well. And I think, I think you're always thinking about what is the, what's the reason, what's the greater need, what's the greater purpose. So I mean, for you to be able to accept and listen and to work with it, it's impressive. Because there's a lot of people that would have gotten defensive or said, I'm doing this for that. And, they could really challenge you, but are you living your purpose? Are you living your possible?
Yeah, Darren. I mean, there was nothing I could do to even come back when she said it because she was telling the truth. I mean, growing up, right? I grew up in a two-parent household, very fortunate, right? Myself, my brother, my sister, we went to church 3 times a week, we were okay, right? And so I could never for the life of me understand how, like what happened to my brother. And it's not like I was embarrassed by it at all. It was a situation where I didn't know how to intertwine my worlds at this moment, right? And because I've outgrown that. Like I've outgrown me thinking about, I've learned a lot growing up, but I just was just like, I kind of like did out of sight, out of mind, but like that was not the right thing. And let me just I should probably tell you just a little bit more about Sue Ellen Allen, where when she speaks, why people should listen and why I would never ever have anything crazy to say back to her for a variety of reasons. But this is the woman who actually wrote the letter to President Obama that said, "Hey, you could be doing more for this population, and here is what more looks like, in my opinion." So she told him he really needed to come visit a prison, and she went on to say all of these things. And President Obama actually took her for her word, and he went to visit a prison. And so because of that letter, she wrote him 7 times, and it was the seventh letter that actually got pulled and reviewed. And he invited her to the State of the Union, the last State of the Union, and she was in the First Lady box. And so I should probably tell you as well. Not only did Sue Ellen Allen write this letter to President Obama, it got pulled, and she just became a figure at the White House during that time. She also did work with former President Trump as well. And so seeing this lady be able to speak across political lines and join forces and have people agree on one topic and have everyone understand and see why this is a public concern and more importantly, a public safety issue if we don't support this population. I think it was just so profound. And so more than anything, she will forever be in someone I look at as just a person who was able to bring everybody together.
And then, it doesn't matter when you think about humankind or human dignity, it doesn't like separate at the policy lines or political lines, does it, or should it?
It should not. It should not. And I attribute a lot of the work that I'm doing now and how I'm able to speak to everyone about everything and ground people on just some commonalities. Again, if that conversation never happened at that restaurant, I just don't know if I would be here the same way and talk about the same things that I'm talking about so matter of factly and in some cases so boldly, but it's because that's how she led, right? And she's gonna forever be she's up there. This right here is a congressional record. She's actually in the record book in Congress because of her work. And so I know I spent a lot of time talking about her, but it just brought me back to, how did I really get immersed into this work? And there's things that I'm grateful for, right? Like when I think about the work we've done, right? My former company, they relocated me out here to a whole nother state. I would have never been in this state. I would have never been able to meet Sue Ellen Allen. So I'm forever grateful for just little opportunities throughout my entire career because everything needed to happen the way it happened for us to even be having this conversation right now.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for that. And if let's talk about your last role for a minute too, about the CEO Action for Racial Equity. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that work? And I think you were pretty instrumental with that too. Your voice was carrying and echoing around different chambers all around the country.
Well, thank you, Darren. Yeah, that was it was so necessary when it was established. We as a nation was just in such an interesting time for a variety of reasons. When you think about COVID, when you think about the social unrest, thank God I worked for an amazing CEO at the time who knew that, he not only needed to talk the talk, he needed to walk the talk, right? And he needed to do it in a way where it was very genuine. And I think his actions did just that, right? And so because of that, I was amongst a good handful of individuals who was a part of the CEO Action for Racial Equity, a fellowship that in its beginning, it had upwards towards about 250 talented individuals from across the country representing a variety of different companies from multiple different sectors, making up about 102 companies where each of those CEOs said we want to really focus on advancing public policy and get laser focused on doing so from a racial equity lens. And so during my time at the fellowship, you're right, I just, again, one of the highlights of my entire career where I had an opportunity to go deep on this very topic, fair chance hiring. And so did some amazing work, got to work with some amazing CEOs and their executive leadership teams across this nation. I worked with some really great people, and it wasn't just I, right? It was what we think. It was definitely a team effort where we helped to really educate people on this very topic. It was towards the tail end of my time at CEO Action for Racial Equity where my role expanded, and I got to do more in the economic empowerment space, supporting not only fair chance hiring, but some of the thoughts behind business diversity, which is really the ecosystem of supplier diversity. And then some of the work in the community development financial institutions. So when you think about access to capital for underserved and unserved communities, that's a topic that we really leaned into, which is the CDFI conversation. But yes, CEO Action for Racial Equity is doing amazing work and have done some amazing work on a policy front. And these corporate engagement strategies, when you think about many companies nowadays, they're looking to lean into social issues. They're looking to have some level of social impact. Think ESG for an example. And so the fellowship, CEO Action for Racial Equity, will fall under like the big S. If I had to kind of, where does it fall in corporate America? Why should people care? It's literally falls either under the big S, or a lot of companies roll it into their DEI work.
Yeah, the big S. Did you say what that means?
It's so environmental, social, and governance, so ESG. But I always all of the work that I do on social issues, I'm like, it's always a big S because we try to lump a lot of things under social. But there's a lot of great things happening, impactful things happening. So I always say it's the big S and it's not a tiny S. Many companies have, depending upon the industry, Darren, many companies lean more into the environmental, right? They say this is a big E, and then we do some S and G, or this is the big G. And so a lot of companies I work for, it's always the big S.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. Let me ask you this question, because I feel like it's hard work, and in today's day and age, it continues to be divisive when we talk about equity. We have different governors with different beliefs, and not to get into every detail, how do we get to an ideal place in our lifetime, and what does that place look like to you?
Well, Darren, that's a loaded question. I mean, for me, right, we do. I think the words, everyone, it's a big conversation in this nation. Let me just say that. And one that even amongst my friend groups, I personally decide not to tangle with for a variety of reasons. I have several opinions, and if I had a magic wand, I will just wave the wand and all of the things will be fixed. But I know, in all seriousness, it's more convoluted. We make it more convoluted, and it's really not. I think baseline, if we make sure that we're creating spaces and environments where everyone feel like they're valued and respected, we're hitting a mark. If we're creating environments where people feel like they can meaningfully contribute and have some level of impact, then we're meeting the goal. I think it's important for us to respect the differences that come with individuals. I think it's absolutely important for us to have some level of equity. We talked about it a little early on in our conversation. Solid equity plans can definitely lead to equality on all fronts, right? Like, because that's what we want. We want people to just be treated with the level of fairness that they believe they deserve. And then last but not least, I think that in all we do, we should be creating these environments that is very much so inclusive, right? Not forgetting anyone, making sure that everyone, not only are invited to the party, but they have an opportunity to speak if they want to, right? And so long gone the days where just having a seat at the table is enough. You have to be able to sit at the table and you have to be able to share your thoughts. You just have to be, if that's what you choose to do. And so you're right, it's very polarized right now, and I'm saddened by that. But I will tell you, it makes me work a little harder and it just allows for people to be more creative, my opinion.
Yeah, and I love how you were very open, and I appreciate you sharing that. But I guess more importantly too is like you're talking about equality for every single human being. You didn't say anything in particular about any individual. Like I think for all of us, we all need to have that sense of belonging, no matter what situation we might be in, workplace, community, what have you. I think when you look at anybody in any environment, if they don't feel like they're belonging or if they're not fitting, they're not going to be themselves. They're not going to be, wanting to put themselves out there or to speak up, as you talked about, right? When you have a seat at the table, if you're not feeling safe with the room or you're not feeling safe to be able to speak out or speak up, then it's gonna be a lost cause for anyone for that matter. What I'm with you, I'm motivated just as much these days as I was when we met many years ago, and we've had our conversations over the years. And like, I'm sitting here, admiring, where you've come from, where when we first were working together, I'll say Mass Mutual because we worked at Mass Mutual together, and you were, I remember you were at the call center, you started there, and you progress in many different roles. And I remember sitting there as you're talking. I'm in Connecticut, you're in Phoenix, like kind of in this environment where, you're talking about lean, Six Sigma, continuous improvement. And I remember being mesmerized back then, maybe many, many years ago, just about how much passion you bring in every topic that's on your mind. And I think it's similar in the sense of you are looking to bring out the best in every individual that's in front of you. I don't know if that resonates with you, or I don't know if you remember that call or remember those times.
Yeah, Darren. I mean, because it's interesting that you should mention that, and I absolutely do remember that. But I mean, I started my career in corporate America in an entry level role. I just did, and I never looked at the role that I had as a job. I've always looked at it as a career, right? Like I've always and when I was working in the service center, in the call center, and my friends would be like, "Oh my gosh, you work at Mass Mutual? That's amazing! Oh my gosh, you work there. Well, what do you do for the company?" I would say, "Oh, I'm the face of the company." And everyone would look at me like I had 17 heads. And I would be like, "What?" They're like, "You're right." And I'm like, "No, when you all or your parents or your grandparents contact Mass Mutual, you're not speaking to the CEO and his executive team. You're speaking to me and my colleagues and my friends." And so that automatically qualifies me as a face of the company. And then we would giggle and laugh, and they'll be like, "Wow, you're just wow. Like, how, like, what would make you? That's just great." And I'm like, "Yeah." And so because I've always thought that to be true and how I've always carried myself, every interaction that I've ever had at my time with Mass Mutual, Mass Mutual just holds a special place in my heart. Um, I just had great opportunities and great moments because that's been my outlook. That's just been my outlook on my entire career. I want to go back to something, Darren. We cannot have a big conversation about DEI and the inequities, and then we just go into my time or our time at Mass Mutual. I want to circle back on a really important point, and one that even without me tangling in this, you know, playing tangle in this very important topic, I just want to make sure that I think as a nation and as a society, and the reason why I always say equity and equality for all people is because we know right from wrong. We know when people are not being treated fairly. We know when we're putting things in place to make people's lives harder than what they should be. Like we know that as adults, as humans. And so I do not have to call you out or call out a group of people or anything for that matter when people just should be doing the right thing, right? Like I don't have to add fuel to the fire. We know when things are wrong, we should just fix it. Like that's a part of problem solving 101. If there's a problem, that's a just do it, right? We don't have to make the situation that much worse. And so I just want to make sure you know, and your listeners know, I am very in tuned as to what is happening in this nation on this very topic. And I think that as a whole, there's opportunity for us to get this right. We haven't done a great job as a nation in getting it right and making people feel safe. And so that will be my call to action with that topic. As we wrap that up, is I just want to make sure people feel safe in all spaces, in all aspects of life.
What would you suggest folks could do from here? Is there an action? Is there something they could do to help each other feel safer or for themselves for that matter? Like what's on your minds?
Yeah, I mean, just freaking be normal. Like long gone are days where people just freaking show up and just be like why are we trying to be so decisive on certain things? Like it's not even like we put so much effort into dividing and not enough effort into making sure that we're trying to work together. And I just feel like we should probably maybe flip that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just freaking be normal. Like what happened to people just treating people like fairly? Like why would you treat people any different than you would treat anybody else? That's what I struggle with the most. Like the amount of energy we put in on certain things. I mean, and again, I will leave it at there. And this is across the board with a lot of people. We just waste a lot of time trying to figure something out when I think we know how to get it done.
Yeah. I do think what we have in our minds and the words that we use and that come up in the day, I think we get sidetracked, we get distracted, we get I guess put off, right? Is we have these definitions in our mind of when people say certain buzzwords or certain words, we kind of go off in our head and we have to react or we have to say something back or we have to, deny it. I think there's a lot of that going on. To your point, if we could push some of that away in our minds and just stop to be a little bit more curious and a little bit more caring with folks that are sitting across the table or people we're walking by in the community or whatever that might be. I think that would be I think it'd be a good start too. I love where you're headed here because it's like, yeah, what happened to us not being human to each other? What happened? I mean, that's a whole different show.
That's a whole Darren, that's a whole different show. It's kind of like we know better, right? We know better on a lot of things. We know right from wrong. And it's like, why do we decide to show up for certain topics and not want to do right by that time? Like what is wrong with people when I just be like, there is no way that you don't know that you're doing that incorrectly or that's not the way to do it, right? And so I mean, goodness, I like to make sure that I'm very careful on a topic that like this that is just so large because of just the different roles and yeah, just who I am. But yeah.
Yeah, I know we touched on how we work together. I think this would be a good pause for us to say, hey, let's start up maybe another conversation, another recording, another day to talk a little bit more about, our story and especially how you opened up today about, helping to give a voice to the voiceless. I think it's so powerful, and I'd love to talk about that more, possibly in another episode, if that works for you.
Oh my gosh, if it works for me, I can't wait, Darren. Our story is like our story. I'm just like, wow, again, I just don't know where I would be as a person, as someone who just shows up in spaces and freely be able to speak my truth in a way where, again, I've just always been confident. I was in church, so I was in church choir and stuff. So I've always had a little, but like in this corporate space to be like, no, like I'm going to speak. And I just, our story is our story. And so without giving too much away, I'm so grateful for you and your leadership and your friendship. And I cannot wait to share our story.
Yeah, me too. I'm a better person, better human being because of you. I feel the journey I've been on, you've been a big part of it. You've opened my eyes and like a couple of the comments I made earlier about your willingness to give open and loving feedback at the same time, for me to actually pause and think about things. So, I'm eternally grateful for you. I admire you. I'm so honored to be friends with you. And I can't believe what you're doing. It's just amazing. Everything you do is just incredible work. And it's for, a greater cause and purpose. So I'm so happy that you joined the show today, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much, Darren. My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I can't wait to speak to you again.
Wow. Shamia is a voice for the voiceless. That is powerful. What is your way of speaking up for and with the others that might have less of a voice today than yourself? It takes a willingness to give up some of your power and to lead in with selflessness, curiosity, and care, just the way Shamia has shown us on the show today. Shamia has been an inspiration to me and showed me how to use the voice I didn't know I had in a way that helps others be heard. Listen into our follow-up episode where we talk about her story and how she helped me live more authentically and live my possible so that others could do the same on an equal playing field. Take care.
That's all for today's episode. If you liked the show, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Live Your Possible dares to unlock your fullest potential and become an avenue for others to do the same. Join the community by visiting ignitehappy.com. It's time to discover endless possibilities with equal opportunity for all. See you again next week for more insights on how you can live your possible.